Hi, I'm the Grow Boss. I write the Grow Book and Equipment Guide. And in this two-part video, I'm going to tell you the secret, once and for all, on how to correctly water your cannabis plant. Because one of the biggest sources of frustration that you guys have, whether you're calling my weekend webcast live on YouTube, 10 a.m., or you're coming through the front door, or you're on my $49 an hour consult line, one of the biggest sources of frustration you have is trying to interpret the information that's out there about watering your cannabis plant. And that's because 99% of growers fail. So of course the information is insane. So I'm going to tell you the secret to watering your cannabis plant. In the first part of the video, we're going to go over the 5 things you need to consider before you water. And then in the second part of this video, we're going to go over other people's videos once you have that foundation knowledge, right? We're going to go over other people's videos and we're going to compare what they say to what I've said, and then we're going to think about what makes the most sense. I'm going to give you demonstrations on how to do this, all the way from starting seeds or clones to finishing plants. We're going to talk about different kinds of media like hydro or media like soil or cocoa. And so we're going to go over everything you need to know and the secret of watering your cannabis plant correctly in just a sec. So keep watching. Okay, so what are the 5 things you need to know when it comes to watering cannabis? And that's what we're going to go over in this section. In the next section, we're going to compare the information that I've given you. We're going to watch a few videos from YouTube. And we're going to hear what they have to say about that and compare it back to what I have to say. So, what are the 5 things that you need to know when it comes to watering your cannabis? Roots, ranges, the photosynthesis equation, plants versus bucket size, and quantity versus concentration. Because when we're talking about roots, what do you have to know? Well, there are a few details. 1, roots have 2 parts. There's the root hair and the root shaft. The root shaft absorbs water. The root hair absorbs nutrients. 2 different parts, 2 different objectives. Now, there's damage that can be caused from overwatering or underwatering. Either way, if you underwater and you dehydrate the roots, the root hairs die first and you can't absorb nutrients, and the plant absorbs water through the root shaft. You could dehydrate all the roots to the point where the plant can't recover no matter what you do. That would be underwatering. Now, overwatering, we have to start by admitting that cannabis roots are not meant to be wet all the time. It's a weed, right? They want less involvement. It's not like it's in a marsh. You know what I mean? It's not like they have marsh roots where they live above ground as well as below ground. It's not like cannabis comes from a salty environment where they have natural filters built in, right? Those things don't exist with cannabis. It's a weed, grows outdoors, left alone, does its own thing, all by itself. And so when you overwater, whether it be slight chronic overwatering or chronic overwatering, it doesn't matter, because the roots end up like your fingers after you've been in the jacuzzi for a while. They get warped. They get swollen with water because the water from the jacuzzi moves into your skin. How does it happen? Well, water moves from low concentration to high concentration. It's called osmotic pressure. It's how a reverse osmosis system like my Ultimate RO works. It separates out that water, the salt from the water. So you get the water in your skin swells up, it gets ridges. The same thing happens to the roots. Now, if you've got root hairs and nutrients lock onto the root hairs, and different root hairs absorb different nutrients, then when you swell the root hairs, the nutrients, none of them can lock into the root hairs. That's why you get a micronutrient deficiency. It's not because of pH lockout. You don't have nutrient lockout for overwatering or underwatering or because of the pH. None of those things exist. There is no nutrient deficiency in the history of growing cannabis indoors. It's always you guys either overwatering and rotting the root hairs, or your light's too close and the plant can't keep up no matter what you do. But there has never been a nutrient deficiency when growing cannabis indoors. You guys all use too many nutrients. So, When you overwater the roots and you rot the root hairs, the plant can't absorb nutrients. On the visible end, at the plant end of it, the first thing that shows up is always mag, because mag converts light into sugar. So no matter what, the first thing is always mag. Then you'll notice that you have different micronutrients across your garden. And this is deficiencies especially true in hydro. So in hydro, they'll all start turning purple, but then you'll also notice there might be a zinc or a boron or a manganese deficiency in some of the plants. And it'll be random. They'll all have magnesium, but from there, you'll end up with micronutrients. One plant will have one micro deficiency, another plant will have another, and where you guys are all chasing the micronutrient deficiency problem, you have misdiagnosed it. It's overwatering. And everybody in the history of growing cannabis and teaching people how to grow and making videos has misdiagnosed it. There is no pH lockout. There is no nutrient lockout. Literally, like I've even got, I even have this in the book. There is no pH lockout. Read my lips. It's got cold sores on them. pH lockout is never the problem. It can't be. Because where you think, oh my God, the pH has changed so much, I'm telling you that advanced nutrients adds a secret ingredient to their cocoa blend. It's iron. Because they tell you that cocoa leaches out the iron. Do you know how much iron that they include in a watering? It's 2 ppm. Like 2 ppm. That's the 4 ppm, something like that. That's like their big secret. You got that much iron in CalMag. Go get yourself some CalMag. So again, there is no micronutrient deficiency because plants need so little that if you feed like once, you're just fine on the micronutrient front. So no pH lockout, no nutrient deficiency, no nutrient lockout, none of that. Now, we were talking earlier about the complaints that growers have when they come in the store and call my webcast. YouTube Live, weekends at 10 a.m. And that complaint is the information that's out there is confusing. And let's talk about the information that's out there. Because there are people telling you to water every day. There are people that are telling you to water every 3 days. And yet none of them have included the secret. The one thing that you need to know to correctly water your cannabis plants, no matter what the situation. The nutrient companies don't tell you what it is. The other videos don't tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is in a little bit. That secret that you need to know. The most important thing you need to know when it comes to watering cannabis. So that's what we talk about roots. Now, when we talk about ranges, let's talk about ranges, right? Because look at this video right here. Look at this picture right here. There's a small plant and a big plant, right? And so let's be real. Do you think that the small plant wants to be fed with nutrients like the big plant? Do you think a big plant wants more nutrients or less? Do you think that a small plant wants less light or more? And so there's a range. For instance, each leaf on a cannabis plant can deal with 10 photons an hour. Don't care what the par is, don't care whatever the fuck you think about your light. The reality is that a leaf can handle, a full-size leaf can handle 10 photons an hour. Now you tell me how to figure out when you're measuring light with your par and your spectrum and all that shit, how you figure out 10 photons an hour. Because you may have the right par at the plant leaf, but if you're hitting the side of your tent with light and it's bouncing back, there are more photons than your plant can handle. Simple math. So, small plants want less light and less nutrients, right? Now, what are the three things in the photosynthesis equation? Using light for energy, plants combine water and CO2 to make sugar and oxygen. So, you have light, water, and CO2. Your plant can only use so much water based on the plant size. The bigger the plant, the more water she uses, right? Because the more photons she's converting and the more sugar that she's making. So, light, water, and CO2 are all limiting factors in the equation. Now, first, if you have a light, water, and atmospheric CO2, the next thing you want to add, of course, is more CO2. But once you've added more CO2, you have a choice. Are you going to add more light or more water? Well, you can't add more water. There's plenty of it in the bucket. So all you're left with is light and CO2. Those are the only two limiting factors that you can adjust. So water Doesn't even matter when it comes to producing sugar. Once the bucket's wet, it doesn't matter if you run off. It doesn't matter what nutrients were in it. Light, water, CO2. There are no nutrients in this equation. That's why I keep telling you the nutrient manufacturers are fucking you. There's no nutrients in sugar. Light, water, CO2 equals sugar and oxygen, of which the plant releases oxygen as a byproduct. So why do the nutrient manufacturers tell you their nutrients? Why do the soil manufacturers tell you their soil matters? Light, water, CO2. What are you going to do? Add a better soil? Light, water, CO2. Now, the rules that I'm giving you, light, water, CO2, or whether we talk about roots when we come back a step here and we talk about watering the roots. Look, more roots, more fruits. Roots want to search for it. So the information that you're getting for people is that the roots want to search for water. Well, if the roots want to search for water, after all, it is a weed, right? Like tumbleweed or cannabis, a weed. They don't require much. In fact, they require less. It's a weed. They've learned to survive on their own, right? So when you think about these facts, it's leaning us toward less water, right? It's leading us toward an easier environment. Less is more, right? You can't kill your plant and expect to finish, so you have to fall on the side of less than 100%. You can't grow 101% cannabis. Now, you might be able to get more if you put the light closer, but if you put the light closer, it gets hotter, you burn off the smell, you burn up the trichomes. So there's this spot where you're not burning the trichomes or the scent glands, and that's max yield. Otherwise, you start taking away from the quality. So you get max yield and max quality at the same point, and that's what you're striving for. Once you go above that, you start doing damage. Once you go below that, you might get a little less, but you're not going to kill or burn up your plant. So if we're going to exercise caution on the side of, if we're going to exercise restraint on the side of caution, and we're going to do a little less, then more water or more of anything is the opposite of that. I mean, you have to see my point on that, right? If you're going to do more water, and it seems like less is the right way to go, then more of anything is the wrong way to go, and you're going to punish your plants because of it. So in the light water CO2, you can't add just randomly more light. You either have to have more plant, or the plant has to get bigger, or you have to increase the plant count. You see what I'm saying? You can't just give more light without a corresponding increase in canopy to absorb it. Otherwise, you set your plant on the train of too much light. So, when we come back here and we take a look at more roots, more fruits, we know that roots are a good thing, and then we talk about the roots want to search for it. Why do you think all you fuckers always talk about the roots coming down and circling? Do you know why roots run to the bottom and circle? It's because it's the only part in your bucket. It's because it's the only part in your bucket with air. They come in these little holes down here. That's why roots run down to the bottom and circle. If you were watering correctly and the bucket had the opportunity to dry out, the root hairs would die, because, right, that's what happens. So the root tip comes out, the tip hits like a cloth pot or something, or the tip hits the air and dries, and then all the root hairs themselves become new root shafts with root hairs of their own. So that root tip wants to die. But when the roots go down to the bottom, it's because you're overwatering the bucket and there's no place inside the media for the roots to live. Otherwise, the first root would go down, die, and you'd get side branching. But that's not what happens, because you're overwatering. So root circling is a problem that people that overwater have. Otherwise, the roots would grow back up into the media. So, when we talk about ranges, small plants want less, big plants want more. All right, and that holds true of anything. Small plants water, small plants light, small plants use less CO2. Now, the concentration of CO2 may stay the same, but they're going to use less of it so it lasts longer. All right, the next thing that we were going to go over was the photosynthesis equation. Now, you've heard me talk about it a couple of times already, but the equation breakdown. What's not in the equation? What did I tell you was not in the equation, the photosynthesis equation? Using lights for energy. Plants convert water and CO2 into nutrients and sugar and oxygen. Wait a minute. That's not right. Wait, that's all right. That's right. Plants use light for energy to convert water and nutrients into sugar and oxygen. Son of a bitch, that's not right either. What the fuck was it that plants used? What was it? Oh, that's right. Plants use light for energy to convert water and CO2 into sugar and oxygen. And nowhere in that equation do nutrients exist. Nutrients are 100% worthless. Don't care which ones you buy, don't care which ones you use. Don't care. You must decide to use the right ones at the right time in the right quantity. But do not think that going to GNC and buying muscle growth supplements are going to make you buff without going to the gym. And don't think that nutrients are going to make your buds bigger without more light or more CO2, because you can't add more water and nutrients don't exist in the photosynthesis equation. Just look at your screen. Just look at your screen. Light, water, CO2 equals sugar and oxygen. So, what's the sugar used for? I mean, if the plants are making sugar, what's the sugar used for? Well, first, the plants make sugar during the day, right? They're converting light into sugar, right? That's what they do. The same way solar panels convert light into electricity. Plants convert light into sugar. Yellow dent corn number 4. The most efficient plant on the planet in converting light into sugar, and I think it's like at a rate of 12%. So, what's the sugar used for? The sugar's used for everything. Whether it's cells or fighting disease or transportation or whatever the fuck it is, the sugar is the energy that the plant uses for everything else. Think about it. You eat food. Do you eat food so you can wake up in the morning and drive your car? No. You eat food. Goes through the Krebs cycle. Gets converted into sugar. Then you use that sugar to wake your ass up in the morning, make some coffee, and drive to work. But you don't convert sugar, you don't convert food into paperwork at whatever the fuck your job is. I don't convert sugar into this computer screen. I convert sugar into the energy that lets me do the work. So think about it like money. Back in the day, if you had chickens and I had a cow and I was tired of meat and I wanted some chicken, and you were tired of chicken and you wanted a cow, how the fuck could we trade? I'm going to chop off a leg of the cow? It doesn't work like that. Are you going to give me 400 chickens? If I wanted 400 fucking chickens, I'd raise them myself. So what does money do? What is money? Money's the common denominator. Money is the common denominator. And so sugar for a plant is the common denominator. That's why when your dumbass comes in the store and tells me, oh, I run my lights 24 hours a day, I go, what the fuck do you think plants do at night? And they go, I don't know. And I go, listen. When I'm done vegging, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to straight set them up here. I go, hey, when I'm done vegging, I've got this bucket full of roots when I transplant into flower. And they go, yeah, I know, so do I. And I go, yeah, but I do it with 33% less light, 33% less heat. And I do it for 33% less money. So what's the fucking bonus of having the light on all the time? We both have a bucket full of roots. And that's because plants transport sugar during the photo-dark period to the roots. So they make the leaves make the sugar gets transported to the roots during the photo-dark period, and the roots store the sugar as starch. Starch, like a potato or a carrot or any of the underground vegetables, the tubercles, they are all starch. You can't eat a potato. Humans can't eat potatoes. A horse can, a cow can. They digest starch differently. Starch is sugar packaged for long-term storage. It's just long-term sugar. That's all it is. And so the plant uses the sugar for everything else. of which nutrients is one tiny fucking thing on a long list of fucking things that the plant has to do during the day. You know what I mean? Like, that's why nutrients are worthless. The plant has to do 100 fucking things. They use sugar for all 100 fucking things. Even the microbes at the roots get fed by the sugar that they scrape, that they scuff off the root. The microbes scuff the outer layer of root. They constantly clean and expose fresh layers of root. And the outer layer of root that they clean is made of what? Starch, which is sugar packaged for long-term storage. Now, the microbes can eat it, so the microbes take the nutrient and the starch. They get 1 unit of sugar from the starch, 1 unit of sugar from the nutrient. They combine it, they break the nutrient apart, they pass the nutrient along to the plant in a form the plant can use, and then they keep part of the nutrient for themselves that they build into their body or whatever their processes are. So even the microbes use sugar. So on the long list of shit the plant has to do, microbes is one of them. Fuck nutrients. Fuck nutrients. And I'll tell you fuck nutrients later in the video too. Another reason why they're fucking you when it comes to the nutrients. Alright, so let's take a look at the next one. So there's photosynthesis, then there was photosynthesis, then there was plant versus bucket size, and quantity versus concentration. You know what? I'm going to open up quantity versus concentration next. No, I'm going to do bucket size. Let's stay with bucket size. I'm going to do bucket size. Okay, let's start with that picture. Notice in the equation, in this equation, that of those two plants, that the bucket size remains constant. Okay? If you increase the plant size and do not increase the bucket size, what will happen? What will happen to the water in the bucket? That's right. The bigger plant will consume it faster. So, plant size versus bucket size is a relevant factor. So the rate of the water loss equals transpiration plus evaporation. Transpiration is what the roots do. They take up the water, it comes out to the leaves, and it sweats off. Evaporation is what happens from the top of the soil. Maybe a little from the bottom or something like that. All right? And so that's small plant, big bucket. You have to water less often. Big plant, small bucket, you have to water more often. Now, when we talk about quantity versus concentration, this is a big deal because let's say that you are going to water your plant with a quart of water. Let's say you want to raise this water to 500 ppms. It might require a teaspoon of some nutrient to get it to 500 ppms. Now, let's say you want to water a gallon of water. Okay? To raise a gallon of water up to 500 ppm, the same feeding, right? Let's say your last week of veg, you're about to go into flower. Let's say you just finished veg. Veg ended yesterday, you transplanted, now you're in flower. You ended veg at 500 ppms in a 1 gallon bucket. Okay? Now you move into flower. The plant's the same today as it was yesterday, so the lights come on, it's 12:12. And you've decided, because you were feeding last time with 500 ppm, you're going to feed this time with 500 ppm. And so you decide to make a gallon of water, and where you use 1 teaspoon for a quart, you're going to put 4 teaspoons into a gallon. It's the same ppm. And so there's a difference between quantity and concentration, because in 1 quart of water, I add 1 teaspoon to get to 500 ppms. In 1 gallon of water, I use 4 teaspoons. Yet, both of them have 500 ppm of salt nutrient in there. Now, is that the same? Is it the same? And how does that play out with your plants? Because when you look at this picture here with the nutrients, look at all the different levels of nutrients in those buckets, right? I mean, that's seriously different. So when we talk about these nutrients, we talk about how much water. We talk about how often to water. How many nutrients are you going to add in there? And how many days between watering? Because all of those things are relevant to the final value of what's inside the bucket. And in the next video, we're going to listen to what some people think you're supposed to do about watering and flushing and drainage. You know what they tell you, like a little bit should come out the bottom? We're going to listen to some ridiculous informational videos about how the fuck to grow cannabis and water in the next series of videos. But again, in this series of videos, the most important, this section of the video, the most important thing I need you to understand again is the 5 rules for watering. The roots, the ranges, the photosynthesis equation, the quantity versus concentration, and the plant versus bucket size. And I'm going to get into the secret of correctly watering in the next section of the video, the second section of the video. I'm going to get into the secret. But we can't do that until you understand the rules behind watering your bucket. You need to know that there is a difference in the concentration and quantity, because you could make 1 quart at 500 ppm and a gallon at 500 ppm, and they both have the same concentration. They're both 500 ppm, but they are not the same quantity, is it? Because if you want 1 teaspoon for a quart, it would require 4 teaspoons for a gallon. And where the concentration may be the same, you most certainly are not putting the same amount of nutrients into the bucket. Are you? Are you? If you take a little plant in this big bucket and you pour a gallon of water in, if this plant was in a little bucket yesterday and it's in a big bucket, what are the results? What are the thoughts that have to happen, right? Because if this plant wants 500 ppm in a quart, and you put that same plant in a gallon in a bigger bucket and you give it a gallon at 500 ppm, is that the same? Now, we'll go over the difference between that and what the right number, what about the right number should be, and how to think about it in the next video when we watch other people's videos and listen to what they have to say, for sure. But for now, I need you to understand the rules about watering, whether it's transpiration and evaporation, or quantity versus quantity, or bucket size, concentration versus quantity, or bucket size. They all come into play because in the photosynthesis equation, water is never the limiting factor. Even if your bucket runs out of water, your plant will die. And while it may be the limiting factor in that one instance where you've dehydrated your plant, under any normal growing condition, adding more water is never, ever the right answer. And all you have to do to determine that is just look at the photosynthesis equation. Using light for energy, plants can combine water and CO2 into sugar and oxygen. Light and CO2 are the things that you need to concentrate on, not water. And yet consistently in the videos that we see, these fuckers are watering every day. And you must be watering once every 5 days. If you're watering any more frequently than once every 5 days, and I'll tell you why in the next section. But you should not be watering less than once every 5 days, once every 4 days, maybe at the very end of flower. But there's a reason why you should not be watering more frequently. And of course we went over that when we were talking about, when we were talking about this one here. Roots want to search for it. More roots, more fruits. You're trying to encourage root growth, right? That's the decision. We want root growth. We want to do the things that the roots want. I don't care what you want. The plant doesn't care what you want, right? The plant wants what the plant wants. And that's why 18 to 49-year-old males are the worst growers, because you don't care what the plant wants.
So
you don't care what anybody wants. You don't care what your girl wants. You don't care what anybody wants. You're just going to do your own thing like me. I totally get it.
How often should I feed?
I totally get it. And one of the things that we're gonna, dude, you're gonna want to see this. You're gonna want to watch this guy's video in the next section. Listen to what this guy has to say.
How often should I feed? This question is somewhat relevant to whether you're getting runoff out of your medium and whether you're checking the parts per million of that runoff. Let's say you are in a situation where you want your medium to hold water. For some reason, you don't want to water that often. In that scenario,
let's just stop right there, and that's enough of this fool. Let's just stop right there. So let's just say that you want your bucket to dry out faster. You want your media, for some reason, this guy right here is telling you, for some reason, he can't fucking imagine why you would want your plant to dry out. He can't fucking imagine a reason why you would want your plant to stay wet longer. He's trying to get you to dry it out as fast as possible. I'm trying to get you to leave your plants the fuck alone and leave them alone. Why do you think I have the 5-day rule when it comes to watering? Because, and this will be what I end this video on, because if you've got somebody that's going to try to tell you how to water and they don't know the secret, and they're just going to tell you, like, they come in the hydro store. I got fucks all the time that come in the hydro store. Oh, I water every day. I water every 3 days. Don't worry about what the plant wants. I'm going to do what I want to do. They don't ever win. They don't ever win. Ever. Not ever. And I know that because I'm the guy who knows the winners. I know all 25 of them compared to the 10,000 that have failed. Winning when it comes to growing cannabis is rare. The probability of you failing at growing cannabis, it approaches 100%. I know 10,000 growers. 100 of them are not fantastic. The number is smaller than that. And it's because all of you guys do too much. And you do too much because when you come in the store, you guys are confused. And you always tell me the same thing. The information on the internet is contradictory. I can't wrap my mind around it. They're telling me to water all the time. They're telling me to wait till the plant droops. And here I am telling you, black and white is too extreme for a cannabis plant. You need to grow in the gray area. And we'll get more about the gray area in the next video. But remember, doing too much kills your cannabis plant. It's always easier to recover from doing a little less. You want to run your plants at about 75%. You don't know what 100% is, but you do know that 101% of any light water CO2 will kill your plants. At 75%, you may get less, but you're not going to burn up your fucking plants. All right, if you guys want to catch my webcast, you can watch it live on YouTube on the weekends, 10 a.m. And of course, if you guys want to see the third part of my video, you guys will have to go to my website, thegrowboss.com. Go ahead and click on the movie, the membership page for the videos, and you can go ahead and watch the third section, the second section of the video here. All right, listen, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Watch for me. Thanks.